Hi, I'm Nick Lalonde, your host of What's Next, making your third act your best act. Today you're going to hear from business owner Roy Marden. Roy Marden left corporate America over 20 years ago to start his own management consulting business dealing with government and public affairs. He's 59 years old, and for the last 10 to 15 years has been able to run a business that allows him to work when he wants to. He works on average 20 to 30 hours a week and takes off the entire month of August in most years. He was able to get to this point by knowing his numbers and making good financial decisions throughout his life. What stuck out to me in my conversation with Roy is that he said if he retired tomorrow, it wouldn't change his life financially. While extra money is nice, he said he does it for the mental stimulation, it's fun, and he enjoys helping people out. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with Roy as much as I did. One thing that stuck out to me is you mentioned in your survey that you were semi-retired, that you were looking to retire in 5 years. And as I talk to you, I don't see someone that is looking to retire in 5 years. I think I see someone that may work for the rest of their life. And the reason why is because you're able to work on your terms today. Sounds like you get to decide how many hours, who you work with. But more importantly, it sounds like money aside, you really need mental stimulation.
It's not that I need it, it's that I want it. I guess when I say, I can't remember what I put down on the survey, these things come and go and I forget. But I mean, to me, if I were in the 10, 15 hours a week mode, picking up whatever I wanted to pick up, to me, that's basically retired. That's almost like a hobby that just happens to fall into the general rubric of work that you get paid for. To me, that's not work. That's just like, hey, it's something that I do. That's like, what if I went to a museum 5 times a week or something like that? So I guess, I know you're trying to get the terminology down, but to me, retired, semi-retired, I don't kind of look at it that way. To me, it's just something I do. I'm not trying to kind of obfuscate your question. It's just, I don't view it that way.
Yep. That's how I see it for you as well, right? I don't think the word retired or even semi-retired necessarily is the box we would put you in, because I agree. I think you could be 80 years old and we could look up and you're maybe doing what you're doing today 5, 10, 15 hours a week because you enjoy it and because you want to, not because you have to. And it sounds like you've been in a position for maybe the last 5 to 10 years where you've been financially independent, where this has been a choice that you come to work, not because you have to, but it sounds like it's an added bonus, right? New York schools are very expensive, high school, and then you have university. And so it's an added bonus to see those numbers go up. But you sounds like you have not done it for the money for the last 5 to 10 years.
Oh, at least. Never. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice to have. But in some sense, from a financial perspective, I almost liken it to an annuity like Social Security. Yeah, I'm happy to take it. I'm happy to get it when the time comes. It's not enough that's going to change my lifestyle any. It's not enough that's going to get me to move from one venue to another. But I'm surely happy to have it as a rounding error to pay for certain things and do. I mean, and I consider myself very fortunate to do that. That said, I wish I never had to pay into it, and I could have gotten it without paying into it, and I could have invested it much better, but I digress. But again, none of this is about the money per se. I've kind of, again, taken care of that to date thus far. But again, all that is predicated on who knows what the future is going to bring. If markets completely collapse, if there's a World War III, which frankly, we're close to being in the beginning of, could all of this change? Yeah, it could. But I can only operate on what I know now, and that's what I know now.
What's the name of your company today?
It's just Roy Marden and Associates, LLC. So it's just obviously named after myself, and I bring on consultants on an as-needed basis, depending on the nature of the project. People who I can call up or email and say, "Hey, you want 10 hours a week? You want 15 hours a week? You want to do some work? You want to do some research?" It's usually that sort of stuff. And I bring people on and off who I, again, also have known for many years, who I can trust. And No, for the most part, they're kind of in the same situation as me. They're people who, are not kids anymore, don't need to do this, like doing it, we're buds. And I would say 4 out of 5 times that I ask, they will do it.
So if this went away tomorrow, where are you finding mental stimulation?
Like I say, I do a lot of reading. I visit a lot of places. We are big, big travelers. We've gotten our daughter into that. So we travel all over the world, or at least we did prior to COVID. It kind of put the kibosh on things. But we tend to go to a lot of places that are, atypical, not your, oh, let's go to London and Paris. Not that we haven't done that, but we like to kind of go off the beaten path and visit things that you may have read about in a textbook or you may have read about in the New York Times. But to me, that doesn't explain what a place is really like or what people are really like. And, does that take up 15 hours a week? No, it's, a few trips a year. But we love doing that. And to me, the planning is part of the whole challenge, which takes up a lot of time because I am almost anal when it comes to kind of everything. But I do a lot of planning with that. So researching about that is kind of stimulating for me.
Do you know anyone who's retired today?
Quite a few people.
How are they handling retirement?
You know, I don't think anybody is 100% honest. But I know people who fall into a couple of categories. I know people who are perfectly happy not to work, never really like the working world, and go out and play, you know, the game of the day, pickleball, and go out and hang with their friends or do whatever, and they seem perfectly content. On the other hand, I know people who are like bored out of their skulls and sit at home and have the Weather Channel on 24/7. And then I know people in the middle who are just like they're okay, they're pretty happy. It's sort of hard to tell whether they're content or whether they're rationalizing. So it kind of kind of depends on the person. I think it depends on each person's individual makeup.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I'm curious, what do you think it would look like for you then if you didn't have work? So the consulting goes away, right? You mentioned travel, you mentioned reading, and oftentimes those are some of the things that I hear as activities. I think it's really important to solve for just our average Tuesday where maybe we're not traveling the world, maybe we're just waking up and having a typical day. And so
Oh,
what would that typical day look like for you then if we weren't traveling the world?
well, as I mentioned before, I picked up marathoning at a later stage, and I was still very much into it at the time COVID hit. And unfortunately, what happened is I got very sick, not COVID related back then, and had to go for emergency surgery, which took me months and months to recover from. And I'm fine. But not only did it get me physically out of the training, but mentally, it was very hard to get back into it. And it's now 3 years later. And other than the occasional periodic exercise thing, I haven't gotten back into it. Not because I can't. I mean, I can't right now, but because mentally I'm not in a place where I want to be. And I'm kind of working on it. And so my goal is to get back to marathon training. I have run marathons partly on my own, partly for charities to raise money for them, which gives the whole marathon experience even more of a kind of cause, kind of a reason to want to do it. And so my
Mhm.
goal is within the next, just to throw out a number there, year, to kind of mentally turn that corner, start training again, and get back to running. Because everyone talks about the runner's high. Forget about that. To me, it's more of a wow, that I still can remember the first marathon I ran. It's like, wow, how did I do this? I almost still can't. I mean, I've done it 5 times and I sort of still can't believe it. It's like, how did I do this? It was always from the time I was like a little boy. And my wife asked me this like a few weeks ago. She goes, and I'll digress for 20 seconds. She goes, do you have any goals or dreams when you're a kid? I said, yeah. I'm an 8-year-old kid. I said, one of my goals was to be a Major League Baseball player. Obviously, that never happened. One was to win an Olympic medal. Obviously, that never happened. And one was to run the Boston Marathon, which I never thought would happen. And that I actually achieved. And I said, wow. I said, if you can achieve one of your three, even if they're kid goals, which are kind of unsophisticated, that's pretty damn good. And I've done that 4 times now. And it's like, I, I, I have no idea how anyone runs 26.2 miles, even though I've done it 5 times. I have no idea how anyone does it. I said, how the hell did I do it? And yet, after it's done, it's such a sense of personal achievement. Not so much that I think you did it, but that all the work it required leading up to that. So in answer to your question, to go back to stage one, that would require a lot of time, actual time and mental time and intestinal fortitude to get to that. And that is my goal, to get back to that within the next year.
One thing that sticks out to me is it seems like you knew when enough was enough in your household. So at some point, you looked at your financial plan and said, hey, we have enough coming in, or could have enough coming in from our investments to where I no longer need to work, but I'm choosing to work. And that period was maybe a decade, maybe even longer ago. How did you review your numbers? Were you budgeting yourself and saying, hey, this is what we have coming in, this is what we have going out? Tell me about that process.
I think it probably started when I left the corporate world. I was with a major company that back at the time was doing what a lot of companies do, downsizing. And they offered me a package to leave, which was ridiculously generous. And aside from it being generous, I knew that if I didn't take it within 6 to 12 months, I was likely to be fired and be in a far less better financial position. So I took it and I left, and, I was kind of lost at that time. I kind of, for the first year, I kind of did almost kind of what you're talking about. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have this thing set up. I had just gotten married. I wasn't in any financial danger because I was still getting a package, but I was bored. I sort of had no purpose. And the main purpose didn't come till my daughter was born. But prior to, between those two periods of time, it was sort of like, all right, you know what? I'm going to focus on investing. And I do a lot of these things myself. I do have an advisor who works with me, but I do a lot of it myself because I've done a lot of research and what have you. And I actually, believe it or not, have never, ever really had a budget per se. And the reason why is because I'm very disciplined in knowing in my head. I mean, you could show me your credit card number and I could memorize it in 5 seconds for the rest of your life. So don't do that. So I remember I'm very, everything, numbers just stick with me. So I kind of knew instinctually, I said, okay, I know where things are coming in from. I know where things are going out to. I know I have enough and that's fine. And then it really wasn't until maybe, I guess it was right after COVID started when, I guess a lot of people took stock of where they were because you kind of couldn't do anything. You were stuck at home. I mean, I could still work because doing it this way. And I said, you know what? I'm going to work up a pseudo financial plan for myself, take stock of my assets, take stock of my liabilities, figure out where money's coming in down the road and that sort of thing. And figure out, what's my best play down the road, including that I had a lot of company stock and down the road, I know I'm going to get a pension. When's the best time of taking that? Social Security, when's the best point of taking that? I mean, I even got into the weeds, and I see from your fact down there, you'll know what NUA is, I presume.
Yep.
So I said, almost no one I work with knows anything about this. I said, I'm looking at this, and I said, I got a ton of company stock. I said, that has a cost basis of it's de minimis. I said, I think this makes sense for me to do. And I said, but before I go ahead and pull that trigger, because once you do it, there's no going back. I said, you know what? I'm going to work with a financial planner, which I did. And I said, I laid it all out. and I sent it to them, and they ran this humongous financial plan, which I'm sure whatever firm you're with does the same thing, all computerized, blah, blah, blah. And I have to laugh, and I'm not trying to say this to pat myself in the back. And he said, "You didn't need this. You knew as much as we knew. You're right." And I mean, he was complimenting me, and I appreciate it and all of that. But I like doing my own research and figuring out where I'm going to go. But their model confirmed for me that my preconceived notion was correct, and I went ahead and did it. And so that was really the first time I ever had a financial planner per se. Prior to that time, I have someone who I used to um, buy and sell bonds for me, because while I know equity markets well, not nearly as facile with bonds. So I have someone who does that for me. Just go ahead and do it, and that. But as far as equities and overall strategy and planning, I'm pretty good at that. But in this case, because it stood to be a lot of money, particularly since a lot of the corporate stocks I have pay a ridiculously large dividend. Pardon me, from where I get a lot of the money, so I don't have to do this work. I said, does this make sense? It turned out it did, and life has gone on other than paying his fee, and it's all worked out well.
I'm curious, what does your wife do for work? Does she stay at home? Is she in the workforce today?
She's in the workforce. She works for a financial services company. She is a UX designer, user experience type of
Mhm.
designer. She, since COVID, works at home 2 days a week, goes in 3 days a week. She works, this is her own words, not mine, because she wants to. She wants her own source of money. She wants to be challenged. She likes to work. When she is not working, she gets intensely bored in a way that I wouldn't. Like if you said to me, you can't do any work for a month, I could amuse myself. I could sit here reading books on the internet. I mean, I could do it. She would be bored out of her skull. So she likes working. And I mean, it obviously contributes to the household coffers, but she more than anything else does it because she likes to do it. And that's her skill set. It's the sort of computer design kind of stuff.
Was there any sort of adjustment period when it was COVID timeframe and you guys were both working from home that you guys had to go through, maybe boundaries or space, anything like that?
A little bit. I mean, again, I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, most New York apartments aren't exactly these spacious enclaves. So, my daughter was also doing homeschooling. So my daughter would retreat to her room. I'd be at my office desk in the living room. My wife would be in the bedroom. But sometimes they'd be screaming. People would come out. So it was kind of an adjustment period. But that said, we also have like a country house up in the Berkshires in Western Mass. So we would, because of being able to do all this remotely, we would go up there quite a lot. Because there was much more room, and you could even go outside and do it. At least after a while, at the beginning, we didn't have broadband, so it was impossible. Then we got it; it was fine. So it was an adjustment period because everybody was in everybody's space. Even if someone was coming out to get a water, it was like you're in a call and this sort of thing. And so yeah, it was an adjustment, but we made it work. We made it work, and it was not that difficult to do so.
Sounds like your wife really enjoys work. So do you think it'd be similar to you where she would just retirement or semi-retirement, that box doesn't really align with maybe your wife? Do you see her working?
I think she would work longer. The only thing that she doesn't like, I'm a corporate animal by nature, even though I don't work for a big company. When I did, I'm so used to playing the corporate game. I worked for, back in the day, a company that was probably one of the most reviled corporations in America. If you guess it, I'll say yes. And as a result, it was great training because part of what I had to do was give speeches. And not that people were throwing eggs at you, but you were clearly not looked at in the highest of regard. And it taught me how to communicate with people, how to find common ground, and as part of the whole corporate lifestyle. She is not a corporate animal. She's always worked for corporations, but fortunately, in most cases, they've been sort of smaller departmental enclaves that were allowed to kind of work independently. She plays the corporate game. doesn't like it at all. But because of what she does, um, unless she were to go off and do freelance, um, she kind of feels kind of relegated to do this. And she is not, this would be her word, it's not mine, not necessarily someone who is um, great at marketing themselves on a freelance basis. Some people have come to her for side jobs and she's done that. But I'm much more um, uh, I'm much more adept at doing that. As she always says, you could sell cigarettes to a lung cancer patient, which I guess is a compliment in a certain sort of way. But we're different that way. So yeah,
That's hilarious. Um, so it sounds like she doesn't love the corporate world. You love the corporate world. Sounds like she really enjoys work and she would get bored without it. So do you think there
yes,
will be, how old is your wife today?
uh, 51, 51.
51. So do you think she'll continue to work in corporate America until she's in her 60s? Do you think there will be a period of time where she says, hey, I'm going to move into this freelance space because I just hate having to report to someone and maybe some of the minutia?
I think she's going to work. I think she would prefer the freelance stuff if she could get more confident about marketing herself.
Yeah.
As part of this whole financial planning thing, I said to her, look, I said, if I die tomorrow, and hopefully I'm not giving you an incentive, you and our daughter will be taken care of. That's not, I mean, this is not a money issue. And I'm reasonably confident she's not going to put a hit out on me. So that's not the issue. She does want to work. I think if she felt more confident and able to market herself in a freelance basis, she would prefer that. And I think as time goes on, and maybe if I can help her with that, I think that's the way she would prefer to go. But if she ended up remaining in the corporate world, I think she'd be okay with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think also that, as I said before, at the time my daughter goes to college, which will be in 5 years, um, our intent is to move away from the entire New York area. Where that is, I don't know. We've talked about a number of places, but places quite a bit away from here, which if she could work remotely for her current company, which could be the case, she might want to do that. She might want to start anew. She might not want to work at all. I mean, it kind of depends. So it's sort of part of an overall kind of lifestyle decision that we kind of haven't come to yet, but we've kind of danced around the edges of.
One thing that I've noticed, and I sat down with someone who is 78 years old, and I just couldn't help but think, gosh, this 78-year-old, he might as well be like 60. I mean, just seems so youthful. And I get the same impression from you. And now 59, I think, is very youthful. But the reason why I say this is you guys have similar backgrounds in the sense that he said, hey, Nick, I got a late start. I had a daughter at 48 and I had a daughter at 50. And so I said, hey, why do you think you've aged so well? Why are you so youthful? And he said two reasons. He said the first is, we're hanging out with our kids' friends, our
Right.
kids' parents, I should say. And so, they're a little bit younger, right, than even I was because I got a later start. Have you noticed that? I mean, are some of the parents
Yes.
maybe a little bit younger than you?
They almost all are. I don't think they realize that I'm older. I don't think they care because, we talk common ground. So it's kind of a non-issue.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm sensing that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm sensing some youth in you. The other thing uh, that I'm picking up on though is the mental stimulation, right? Even though you have the ability to step away from work and you don't need to, you've chosen to stay mentally engaged. And I think that's really important for us aging well. Not to mention you run marathons now too. So which is a
Hopefully.
really big deal. Do you mind if I just share with you just some of my thoughts and reflections based on our conversation today?
No.
So this is actually one of the better conversations that I've had. I think you have a very healthy perspective and outlook when it comes to retirement. And traditional retirement was created back in 1959. I do not think it was created with you and I in mind. Back when Social Security came out in the 30s, right? Longevity was like for men was 58, and
Yeah.
Social Security kicked in at 60. But in 1959, they coined the golden years, and essentially it's like this endless vacation. Well, there's a good chance based on the fact that you're mentally active, you're running, right? It sounds like you're very engaged with your health, that you or your wife live until your 90s. And so this idea of an endless vacation where all you guys ever do is, travel and play pickleball. You talk about some of the retirees that are bored out of their mind. I think you guys would be bored if you were on this endless vacation.
Right.
And when I hear you talk, it's hey, staying mentally active, being engaged in our work is important to us, but we don't do it because we have to. So I think that's really important. You guys understand what you get out of work and why you work. So that was one strength that I saw. The second thing that I would share with you though is sounds like you have a great sense of community today. It sounds like there's different buckets, right? Of folks that you can tap into, whether it's the Celtics, whether it's kids, parents, friends, right? You have 3 to 4 people that you could call that would give you a pint of blood and travel across the world to do that. I mean, that is amazing. I think a lot of high achievers only have one friend, maybe that would do that for them. So a great sense of community outside. I think knowing when is enough. So one of the areas that I just kept trying to dig and dig and dig, if you noticed, and I was asking you the same question in a lot of different ways, is, hey, why work? What's it all for? And I think what we uncovered is you enjoy it, and the money is nice, but really your purpose in life comes from your family, right? You know, creating just an amazing human being in your daughter. But the work is not your identity. It's not why you were put on this earth. So I just think you have such an amazing perspective on life and your job and money at the same time. Money seems like a tool in your life. It doesn't seem like your God that you chase. So all that being said, these are some of the things that stuck out to me today. But this has been one of the healthier conversations that I've had with high achievers and just learning about your journey. So anything
Can I
come
give
to
you
mind?
yeah, I'll give you two sidebars to that. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of like doing things like this. I, I, I'm not doing this for the incentive. I mean, it's a rounding error. Maybe I'll give it to my daughter. Yeah, I do. I like having these conversations. I mean, this would be like a conversation I would have with one of my buddies, right?
Yeah.
And anything else on top of that is great, and that's fine. The other thing, in conjunction with the when is enough is we are not spendy people. I mean, we do have 2 homes, and I admit that is somewhat expensive, but we're not showy people. We're not, the only thing that I think that I spend money on these days, for the most part, is like I like the latest in tech, and that's my, you know, that's my thing. But I'll give you an example. Like, until a few months ago, the car I was driving, and I could have done better. I was driving a 2006 Subaru Forester. Why? I don't give a crap what people think. It was great to drive up in the snow. It worked. It was fine, blah, blah, blah. Was it the lap of luxury? Of course not, but it worked. And things started going wrong. Every few months I'd have to take it in, another 1,000 here, another 1,000 there. At one point, it was just getting to the point where I was paying more for repairs than the car was worth. So I said, it's time to replace this. And my wife said, just get another Subaru. We'll be fine. And I said, no. I said, you know what? I want to do something for me. We can afford. I'm not someone who's getting a new car every 2 years, every 3 years. I'm not leasing it. You're a financial guy. I said, I'm not financing it. I'm not, taking out a loan on a depreciating asset. I'm not doing any of that. I said, but I want to upgrade. So, of course, being as anal as I am, I did all kinds of research. This stimulates the mind too. And after months of research and test drives, and I dragged my daughter with me to all this, I ended up getting an Audi, which of course she's thrilled with now, right? And
Yeah.
and I mean, I'll have that car, assuming I don't wreck it, for a long time. And that's one of the few things that I've spent a lot of money on because I can. Not, I didn't feel guilty about it, but it's just we're not spendy types. And let me amend that. I actually did the Euro. You'll appreciate this as a financial guy, which I see you are. I would never take a loan out on a car. I was going to pay off the whole thing. And then for that particular month, they said, you know what? We're running a special 2.9% financing. Sold. I can put that in the money market, if nothing else, and I can make money on your loan. I'll take a loan. Done. But anyway, that is kind of so atypical for our behavior. We just don't spend money. Now, when it comes to her high school or college tuition, I fully expect to spend, and I've planned for it, and that will be the case. But as far as like day-to-day expenses, no, we don't need that money coming in because we don't do that sort of thing. This car thing was okay, the other car is falling apart. It was almost like a Flintstones car. We had to run underneath it. We need a new car. You know what? Let's splurge for one time.
I loved our conversation so much. Yeah. You're just an incredible human being and highly engaging. This was a fun conversation.
For me as well.